What is up, guys? Welcome to Etsy Jam. In this episode, we talk with Tara from Marketing Artfully. Tara is a total SEO guru, so we are super excited to chat with her this week. She talks about Pinterest, category pages, knowing your customer, and how she uses Marmalead to plan for estate sales. Stick around till the end when Tara shares her vintage seller ebook with everyone. Enjoy. What is up, guys? Welcome to Etsy Jam. I am Gordon from Marmalead.
And I am Richie from Marmalead. And if you don't know what Marmalead is what makes this Etsy Jam possible. Gordon and I do that full time, and Marmalead is the best Etsy SEO tool for serious sellers. Now, if you want to find it, you can go to marmalead.com. It's spelled just like it sounds. Or you can Google it. And even if you Google Marmalade, we broke Google and we show up at the top for Marmalade now, because that's definitely what you're looking for is Marmalade, not marmalade, even though it is delicious.
This week, we have a very special guest with us. We have Tara Jacobson, who is a complete SEO guru. You can find her at Marketing Artfully, and she also has a couple Etsy shops, Paperly People and So Glamorously Vintage. So she does sell vintage things on Etsy, and we thought this would be a fantastic opportunity to talk to a vintage seller on Etsy and kind of dig into the guts of that area, because it's so often kind of pushed by the wayside and forgotten, and we don't actually even do a very good job of talking about it as much as we should inside of Etsy Jam and on our blog and stuff like that too. So we thought this would be a fantastic opportunity to do that. But thank you for joining us today, Tara. It's fantastic to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
So do you want to start things off and give a little bit of background about yourself and how you got started, where you came from, and how you got involved with Etsy?
Sure. So I have been doing marketing since 2001 in SEO, like plain SEO, Google SEO. So I've come up through all the websites. There was really almost not a Google then. It was Yahoo and all that stuff. And so I have done marketing for realtors, authors, and now Etsy people for years. And a while ago, I thought, probably a year and a half ago, I thought, oh my gosh, I should sell digital products. And like the least hard way to do that right at that time was through Etsy. And so that's my Paperly People shop. Mm-hmm. I have like 900 sales on there. I'm getting ready to hopefully at the end of this season, top that 1,000 mark, which is a goal for me.
Nice.
And so selling digital is awesome. Mm-hmm. Like it's very low maintenance. I think Etsy does an amazing job at managing the logins and the users and all the things. I have a Shopify store that does a nice job too, but that's kind of like Etsy is really easy if you're doing digital. So then my husband and I adopted 3 kids, right? One is now 9, one is 12, and one is 18. But especially when the little one was littler, I was like, I can't keep working on my computer 15 hours a day. He doesn't really like that.
Can only imagine.
Yeah.
And I've always bought like vintage stuff, and I like vintage stuff. Like my office is full of vintage stuff. I just have an old soul, and I like that. Mm-hmm. And so right as I was moving, one of my girlfriends was actually selling on eBay. I moved here about 8 months ago to Florida, and she was selling on eBay. She was crushing it. And I'm like, oh man, I would love that. But do I really want to do eBay? And I was like, okay, I'm going to see what I can do with vintage on Etsy. Mm-hmm. I have an eBay store too. It's just easy. They're all easy to do. People, I feel like, make it really hard, but it's super easy. And so I started that. I think I can't remember how many sales I'm at. I have over 100 sales. I don't know how many more. I just made another sale. Cha-ching!
Nice.
But I moved to the land of old deers, right? Like, so I live in Florida now. And there are so many old deers here and a lot of estate sales because they pop their clogs, right?
Yeah.
So it's glorious. And I really love it. We have a huge house, and I have like 3 racks in the garage. We have an upstairs room that nobody goes in, so I kind of took that over. But it's really, really fun. I enjoy it. I actually love selling physical products. I've never, I sold digital projects. I did marketing. I made websites. I did I never had something physical to sell, and I totally dig it. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my Etsy story.
So you kind of got into selling vintage just by kind of having a love for vintage things yourself and having them around your house, it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's fun. Like, I just like the fact that each one is one of the things that the vintage sellers hate is that each one is a different item, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
for me, I love that each one is a different item because, like, it's a little different marketing thing,
Yeah.
figuring out who would buy this. What
Mhm.
can you say that would make somebody? This was this thing I sold today for $16.50 was a vintage stemmed pewter chalice. And I tried to figure out like who would buy pewter chalices. And come to find out, people that go to Renaissance festivals, people that
Oh,
have
yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons
Oh,
games,
yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
So cool. So for me, that's kind of interesting. Like my love is marketing, and so each one is like a little marketing opportunity. So I totally dig that.
So that's
That's a really interesting point
yeah.
because that's a different type of challenge. I mean, the same type of challenge just multiplied many times over because, a lot of the
Yeah.
handmade stores then, and I guess if you don't like doing what you just mentioned, like absolutely stay out of the vintage area because you get to do it like over and over and over again. So if you love it, that's awesome. But the handmade, they tend to find a niche and this is their type of customer and the whole brand is about that. My
Yeah.
customer is, this age, this gender, et cetera, likes doing these things and everything they make kind of sticks to it.
Mhm.
But, you have the other approach. You can go to estate sales and you can say, okay, pewter chalice, like who wants this thing? And then you learn about them. And all of a sudden, one of your customers is going to be completely different than the other customer, because,
Yeah.
here you have like a nice fancy bracelet. Over here, you have some sort of like, massive pewter. I'm just thinking what it is now, but like I'm
Yeah.
imagining like massive pewter chalice that like a king from a Renaissance festival is going to be having, right? And it's totally other ends of the spectrum as far as customer.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I can definitely see the market.
Well, I think that a couple of things going on there. Number one, you have so many more opportunities for people to find your store. So I think as a vintage seller, your store matters a lot. Your categories matter a lot. How you hook your stuff together. And then, the other hand of it. So if you guys want to look at a vintage store that is totally niched, Land of Cute, I found it yesterday.
Mhm.
It is full of little ceramic tchotchkes, like dogs and kittens and owls and bears, and like everything in her store is crap that your grandma had that you think, oh my God, and you should see the reviews. Like I get the most amazing reviews. Oh my God, I got this pair of scissors and it looks so beautiful on my desk. And I just, I'm like, really? Okay. I mean, I feel like that too. Like I have stuff on my desk. My little lamp I tipped up is an old deer lamp, and I got my. I think you can see Uncle Sam back there, and
Yes.
but it really is there. What people who are selling vintage have to realize is somebody's buying an experience. They're not buying a product,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like they're not buying a pair of 40-year-old scissors because they think they're going to work well.
These must stay
They don't
really
work
sharp.
that way. Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the things that if you're going to do vintage, you really got to be thinking, hey, what can I do? And then there's a huge. So my eBay friend I was telling you about, we had a huge fight, and we continue to have it. She thinks you should sell things that sell, right? Like she's about making money. She's about finding things that sell, and we'll talk about that later because I have ideas about that. But I'm all about I want to be surrounded by things that I love, even with the stuff I'm selling. So I see lots of stuff at thrift stores and yard sales and estate sales that I think could sell,
Mhm.
but I don't like it. So,
Oh.
it's very airy fairy. It's very much like, do I want to have my home full of, because this stuff's all in your home,
Yeah,
man.
sure. Yeah.
Do I want to have my home full of stuff that I love and like to mail out and like to list and like to do all that? Or do I
Yeah.
just want to find things that list for high?
Yeah.
So
That's a
that's
good point. I could definitely see you getting burned out if you're losing the passion. If it's like, okay, I'm surrounded by all this stuff and I just feel cluttered,
Yeah.
right?
right. This is not it. And I think another thing that you have to do, because I have a little agenda. I feel like I have a list that I printed out to go hang out with my friend today because I'm going to an auction. And I have a little list of things that have actually sold in my store, right?
Mhm.
So I can go out and think, oh my gosh, these bowls are going to sell great. I should buy all these bowls. And you tend to do that because you can find lots of stuff. And then you're like, I have never sold a bowl, like ever. And so what really you want to do is to make yourself your own, be on the lookout thing. So stuff I have sold on Etsy, to give you an idea, a soap dish, a sword, letter opener, bonsai scissors, heart tins. I sell lots of those. Kleenex boxes. Oh my gosh.
Really?
Bathroom. We're going to talk about bathrooms because bathrooms are a hot place for me.
Crazy. Okay.
I know. Switch plate covers. We're going to talk about switch plate covers because they're not that. And Marmalead told me about that. So switch plate covers. Sugar bowls, like old lady sugar bowls, the silver ones. So I think that another thing that vintage Etsy sellers have to do is make sure that they know what is selling in their store.
Yeah.
Because you can get way out of sync with that.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point too, right? It's kind of like a balance between what you and your friend were arguing about, it's cool, like you're saying, to collect the stuff that you love, right? Because it's more meaningful, it's more enjoyable, it's more fun to take pictures of it and explore the marketing aspect of it. But if it's not selling at all, then it's going to just kind of be in your house forever, So it's almost like there's a balance there, right?
Yep. Well, but then the other half of it is you guys had sent me a little list of things. Somebody left me feedback. I will turn that over because I'm obsessed. So one of the things you guys had talked about is the one of a kind, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I have lots of things in my store that I'm able to find lots of, like switch plate covers. Mm-hmm. So everywhere I go, I look for switch plate covers. I dig around in ratty old sheds and find switch plate covers because it does have that more than one of a kind. I already have a listing. Mm-hmm. I don't have to look it up. I've done the research, so it is possible as a vintage seller to do multiple things. They're just not going to be exactly the same.
Now, when you do that, and when you have multiple switch plates, for example, do you copy that listing to a new listing and change it? Or do you, wait till you make a sale on the main switch plate listing and update that for the next switch plate that you have so that kind of becomes like an ongoing listing? Does that make sense?
I was going to ask you guys that. So I have a huge question. So what I tend to do is I have 8 rose switch plates. Like I found a big stack of them. And so I tend to copy, not relist, but copy the ones that have sold because I figure if it's sold, it was good enough to be found in Etsy search. So why not copy that one? And it's already gone. I'm not stepping on my own toes. I also like to have my switch plates done in all different SEO. And this is where Marmalead came in. I call it Marmalead instead of Marmalade. So I'm from Pennsylvania, and they are switch plate covers. There is nothing else that you would ever like. I was thinking, what the hell else are you going to call it? It's a switch plate cover.
Right.
Well, come to find out, everybody else in America calls them light switch covers. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. Who thought? But so when I used Marmalead and I started changing some of those over to include that light switch cover instead of what I just thought, I started selling a lot more of them. My store is very kind of highly ranked, even for ones that I put up because I have lots of them. And so I think that if you can find those little niches, I call that section of my store architectural salvage. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of switch plate covers. I have knobs. I have handles. I have all kinds of stuff like that there. And I do think that's one of the ways you can skip that one of a kind thing. Yeah. But I was going to ask you guys, like, your thoughts of that. I thought, do you want to relist one of those? Because then all the links that were there would come back. But I also think it might be a management nightmare, right? Like which one sold, which one, you sold this one twice. Well, no, I didn't really sell that one twice. My accountant would hate me. So I don't have a good answer for that. Maybe if Etsy people listen, they would tell us, what that is, if we should be doing a copy or we should be relisting.
Now, have you ever tried just relisting one listing, or have you always copied?
I relisted one and something bad happened. I mean, like, not puppies died, but it was confusing. Like, my accountant yelled at me and they said, I'm really afraid of my accountant.
They're scared people.
Yeah, it wasn't like clean. It wasn't then like really, because it's not the same thing.
Mm.
I guess if it was exactly the same thing and you were going to list one and then you had 8 of them, you're going to list one and then sell that one and then pull another one out and list it.
Yeah.
I only have 2 things in my store that I have listed for multiples. I bought a big bowl of chandelier crystals, and they're all the same. So I have 2 listings with lots of chandelier crystals. But even when you're selling the exact same switch plate, because they're vintage, they're not the same. One has more rust, one has Uggs on it, one has paint on it. They're just not the same. So I don't know that we have that same opportunity to list multiples, even when similar. So that's an exciting thing.
So I don't know if Richie wants to jump in on here too, but it's my understanding, and I don't think Etsy has ever come out and explicitly said this, but there definitely seems to be a sense that there is such a thing as like a sales momentum. So as you have a listing, and let's just think handmade for a moment, as you have a listing and you're selling something handmade and it starts to gain traction and get more sales, Etsy really seems to take note of that and bump you up a little bit higher in the rankings. Or maybe you don't have to renew as frequently as some other people might to stay near the top of the rankings. Now, I don't know if
they confirmed it.
They have confirmed that. Okay, so we know that's a thing.
They confirmed that?
They did in one of those discussions. I don't even remember which one, but one of the discussions in the forums, the ones where there's like 30 some pages of comments and stuff. They did in so many words, they said that there is a performance factor in ranking because someone mentioned that.
Now,
so many people have observed it, and it's like, hey, well, we're really thinking there's something here to it. But finally in one of those, they did confirm, they said there is a performance factor, but they didn't say what exactly it was.
Yeah.
They said performance factor and they mentioned engagement. But from what we've heard from a lot of different shops is if you have a listing that has been selling, it'll get bumped up. How that translates to vintage.
Yeah.
Good question.
Exactly.
Can you keep that same, like they say more the traditional SEO, right? Like that link juice, right? Like, can you keep that even if you copy the listing? I'm not quite sure.
Well, I think it does work that way because I have both the digital site and the other one, and it kind of feels like the same thing. If I sell something today, the chances of me selling more today, even though they're different listings, are a lot higher than if I haven't sold something in 2 days.
Yeah.
Like it's now the cool thing about selling vintage is you are a little bit competing with people, but at the end of the day, like how many pewter chalices are there? There just aren't that many. Or how many owl planters with big eyes are there? There just aren't that many. So one of the things that, along with this though, that I really thought of is with vintage, it's really easy to fall into this trap of I'm only going to sell things that are $20, $30, $40 or more. And I don't want to mess with all these little things, right? Because you can find little things to sell. But I do think, going back to Richie's thing, if that performance does kick in, you do want to have those little things to sell, even if they're almost a loss leader or you're just breaking even on them, so that you can keep that little selling engine going.
Now, it also wouldn't surprise me inside of the vintage space if Etsy realizes that people aren't going to be having this same sort of situation as handmade listings where I could have 12 of these in vintage. That's not as common, I'm sure, right? So maybe they even translate that performance metric back onto the shop more so than individual listings. So that's where you could see if you're copying a listing, it might not necessarily be copying over the performance of that listing that you're grabbing from, but it could be, having a factor on your shop as you get more sales and they see that your vintage listings that you have across your shop are giving you a boost in performance versus the individual listings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I believe that they do have a performance metric on the entire shop. And it makes sense. Whenever people are like, why does Etsy do this? I like to explain it as, Etsy's this middleman. Etsy's the salesperson, right? They don't make the product. They're not the buyer. They're not the seller. They're a middleman. So it's kind of like if I needed to sell something to you guys, I don't know what it is, but I've got a car full of stuff. I've got 1,000 products in my car. I can bring in like 5 of them to show you. Which ones am I going to bring in? I'm going to bring the ones that I think you're most likely to sell. People all up and down your street have been buying these, 5 products or one of these 5 products. Those are what I'm bringing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put my best foot forward. Whatever is, it's sort of the, selling what sells, but not quite sort of, right? Selling what sells of the things I'm willing to carry, right? But the things that I have, I'm going to present the ones I think are most likely to sell. And if the shop, if your shop, even if it's vintage, handmade, whatever it is, if it has a high sales rate, right, compared to the competition, compared to the others I could rank, I'm going to keep betting on that same horse. Even though it's a different listing, you as a shop must be doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's your about page, maybe it's just the way you present yourself and professional. People like it, that's good for everyone. It's good for the buyer, good for Etsy, good for the seller.
I agree. I really do. So you want to talk about sourcing?
Yes.
You guys have no idea about any of this stuff, do you?
No.
Okay. Sourcing. I am going to an auction today. Woohoo! Old dear stuff for sale. And
Nice.
So I used Marmalead when I go to the auction, which is awesome. So today at the auction, I have a list of probably 40 things that I would be willing to buy. They show the pictures of them, and I'm like, okay, there's 40 things there that I would be willing to buy. And then what I do is I go into Marmalead and I do the little competition thingy,
Mm-hmm.
and I look. So salt cellars are little dishes, glass dishes about yay big that you're supposed to put salt in,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
They average cost of sale for those is $29. They average 14 views a week, and there's almost 4,000 competing sites.
Mm-hmm.
Competing, sorry, my vernacular stays on SEO. Competing listings.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys, Marmalead said that's not a very good one. It's okay, but it's not very good. The competition's too high, right? So because I already have some, I'll probably get them, but I wouldn't necessarily pay up for them, right? Like I'm going to pay $10 for 10 of them. But if I can't get them for that, I'm not going to pay $50 for 10 of them because I know I can't make my money back.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did amethyst glass, which averages $33 a sale, but there's 24,000 competing products. That seems bad. Like
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So then there's duck decoys. I was like, okay, duck decoys, that seems good. Holy crap, you guys had green all the way down. You're like, this is awesome. This is amazing. Buy the duck decoys.
Buy the duck decoys.
So they average $65 a sale. They get 4.4 views. So they're not like everybody on the street is not looking for duck decoys.
Yeah.
But there's only 1,900 competing products for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm totally buying the duck decoys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then things that you wouldn't think of, like folding rulers perplex me. They're those old, like, folding rulers. Okay.
Yeah.
So they sell for an average of $24. They only average 3 views. There are 888 competing items. And you guys are like, it's not a great thing. eBay hates them. Like eBay, if you're doing the competing sales on eBay, like they sell for $3 each.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is one of those things that you could buy and hold, and they have brass on them. They're a little bit nicer folding rulers. So, but I'm saying with knowing to go out and source, I can really quick use Marmalead to check and see. And I'm like, I am not buying none of that amethyst glass because there's like 500,000 people already selling it. But the duck decoys I know are worth paying up for.
That's pretty cool.
Very exciting.
That's pretty cool. So when you go to these auctions, do they publish a list of everything ahead of time always? Is that common that they do that?
Mostly.
Cool.
Yeah. So as a vintage seller, you could do that. The other thing I think that kind of Marmalead and your own personal sales, which is self-fulfilling prophecy because it's what you bought.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear all the time people want these be on the lookout for bolos, is big in my world. And I think that there is some value to bolos. Like if you have nothing else to do, sit there and search for vintage stuff and see if you can find things that Marmalead says is low competition. There's no category pages and things like that. So that was, I love that for that.
That's pretty cool. That's a really cool way of thinking about it, of kind of like doing your homework ahead of time. And when you get there, you're already armed with all the data that you need to be able to make a decision based on price.
Right, because sometimes it'll go up, even at estate sales or at thrift stores. Like people hate Goodwill. Goodwill has started merchandising their stuff. They're charging more. And so you really need to know if you're going to pay $6 for this vintage item, can you make $30? Can you make $60? What can you honestly list that for?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, you have to know that. And that's a really quick way to get lots of them done at a time.
Mm-hmm. With a lot of used stuff, whether it's, real estate, cars, really anything, they say that if you're going to invest in that with hopes of selling it, that you make your money when you buy it, not when you sell it. Right? You have to buy it under value. Right? Exactly. Yeah. Don't just count on, being better at selling it later on, right? You make sure it's a good value.
Exactly. So my next tip for vintage peeps is working with Etsy. Okay. And I think this matters more. And I kind of stock some of the things too, Richie. And so I heard one of the programmers say, those style things that nobody likes to use, or I guess the homemade, the handmade people like the styles, boho, cottage cheek, country, western, Edwardian, it's in the bottom, right? The guy said that it doesn't show up anywhere, but they use it. Okay. And I'm like, it's there. Why not use it? And so I think one of the things with vintage is you've got to figure out if you like some of these styles, if you go my way, right? Or if you can categorize your thing as that. So I have a little, it's a little stand with an angel on it. It's gold. It's beautiful with a white cup in it. It's for your bathroom. It's god awful. Like it's just god awful, but it is Hollywood Regency. Okay. That's the style of it. So if ladies are looking for Hollywood Regency, they want the glitz and glam. They want the bathroom. They're doing all that. And they're doing those searches. So not only can you put it in your title and your tags, you can pick that style. And I think that's super, super important to do. Mm-hmm. So that's exciting.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I know, right? So you guys focus a lot on something that I don't think anybody else is really paying attention to. And it's the category pages. I am obsessed with the category pages. Mm-hmm. Okay. So vintage is really different than everything else, right? So in vintage, there's only certain categories. There's only 8 top categories. So like accessories, which is clothing, which is clothing, bags and purses, which is clothing. So now you have literally 5 other things to do. Jewelry, which is clothing. So now you have 4 other things to do. Craft supplies and tool, home and living, art and collectibles, and toys and games. So when you're buying stuff, I would really be looking, do any of these things fit into those really top level categories of vintage? Because if they don't, you're going to be hurting. And I'm trying to think of something. Okay, stuff I sell on eBay that wouldn't necessarily sell on Etsy. Faucets, like vintage faucets for hoses. Mm-hmm. I don't know that people could find them on Etsy unless they were searching for that very specific thing, right? Because the downline categories don't support it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's really important. So let's talk about my bathroom thing. So in bathrooms, there's only 84 vintage bathrooms. There's only 84,000 items total for all of vintage bathrooms. Wow. I came from the Google world, And 84,000 is nothing. Like that, I can crush 84,000. And one of the big ones is bathroom decor. Okay. That's where my little thing comes in, right? There's a angel. I should go find it. It's here somewhere. I'll send you a picture. You can include it on the post.
Nice. Yeah. We'll use it as the post thumbnail. Yeah.
So vintage bathroom decor, drum roll please, only has 3,000 items in it. Are you kidding me? That is nothing. Like, I would say 2,900 of those people don't have any idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not doing SEO. They're not trying to price. They're not taking pictures. They're not doing anything. So I think as vintage sellers, there was a really cool category. I'm going to not swear, at least the bad ones. in top level domain of vintage of bathroom is bath mats and rugs. There are 92 items in there.
No way. Wow.
Way. 92. So as a vintage seller, you could absolutely start going and looking for items that are even close. Like if it's a regular rug, I might be tempted to list it in vintage bathrooms and rugs because there's only 92 items there, right? So I just thought that was super interesting. And I love Marmalead. I think that whole thing about the category where you need to know, because I was listing something. I wrote this in that post I sent you guys. I was listing something and I went to the category page and looked, and the item I had wouldn't even have been on, not only wouldn't it have shown up, it wouldn't have shown up, the category it was in didn't show up.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy. I have to find another way to describe this thing that will come up in that search. And after that, I can do whatever I want with it. But if I'm going to be that far buried, it's not going to be worth my time to do.
Yeah. That's a really good observation. That's a good thing that I think even people who are doing handmade should keep that in mind. Like that, it's really limiting when one of your strongest keywords results in a category page, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, then you're competing on two levels. You're competing for that search, and then you're competing for just them to pick please pick the category I'm in. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So
I have two more things to talk about, and then if you want to talk about SEO, we can, or we might run out of time.
Awesome.
So my next one is Pinterest. We were lightly talking about Pinterest before, and I explained that dudes don't get Pinterest. So, as a vintage person, you need to start looking at Pinterest and figuring out what human beings are saving, because it will tell you how to categorize stuff in Etsy. So what I did was I went to bathroom, and underneath bathroom, when you do the search, they have a whole bunch of little diggies. So I did decor, and then they had storage under bathroom, and they had organization under storage. So you need to be going and looking when you're looking and sourcing, is this something that I could put into bathroom storage, right? Because you can share all those pins onto Pinterest and have a whole nother sales channel just pulling into your store. And the cool thing is when you do that search in the top of Pinterest, you'll see you can check all pins, your pins. So I went and did that today, and I am freaking horrified because I don't have my stuff done well enough to show up. I looked up bathroom decor, and my ugly angel chick is not there because I have bathroom decorations.
Oh, yeah.
Bathroom decorations isn't anything. It doesn't count. So that's one of the ways that you can kind of start to see. I know that it's a marketing channel, but it's also a marketing channel because Pinterest has a metric poop ton of data that says that that's the way that ladies categorize things.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very insightful. That's great market info.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
It is.
And then you can see what it is. So like some of the things were organized makeup, right? Like, so if you can source things that help ladies organize their makeup, they really care about that. Medicine cabinet organization. Who knew? Like, that's kind of cool. Mason jars. Oh my gosh, the mason jars are out the wall. Well, if you can buy a whole bunch of mason jars, you could sell them as supplies, or you could sell them to ladies who want to use mason jars to do their bathrooms. And my last thing is shite that's easy to SEO. I amuse the crap out of myself when I do this. Okay, so think about how much easier it is to SEO a menorah than a mason jar, right? Like, people are specifically looking for menorahs. I bought the coolest little statue. I'm not big on buying tchotchkes. I'm not the land of cute, but I bought the statue because it was a Scotty dog. And people buy Scotty dog stuff. They buy wiener dog stuff. They want Siamese cats. They want, there are very specific things that you'll see out in the wild when you're doing vintage that have very specific names or categories or followers that you can absolutely, like, if you see a Scotty dog anything, buy it. Because there's ladies, the bunnies. Dude, I have no idea, but old ladies love bunnies. Like, more than life itself. When you go to vintage places, I'll tell you, there are rooms full of bunny crap.
Bunny rooms. Wow.
Bunny rooms. And if old ladies are buying bunnies, that means that other old ladies are on Etsy looking
shopping for bunnies.
Shopping for bunnies.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't make this stuff up. But you want to be realistic. Like, that's the kind of thing. Like, do I want to have a bunny store? No, that's not really my jam. But if the old dears are going to buy a whole bunch of bunnies, then God bless them. I want to sell them to them.
Yeah.
There you go. Someone has to.
Right? So do you have any questions? Like, did you know anything really about vintage?
Our experience with vintage isn't as much as with handmade. Every now and then we'll get people that engage in the Facebook group and stuff like that about vintage things. So to go through this and hear, your perspective on this stuff has been absolutely fantastic.
Richie, do you like vintage now? You want to go out to some estate sales and look through old stuff? And
I may have to now.
Get bunnies?
Can't wait to go into sheds and look for some light switch plates.
Oh, you should have seen that shed. There was crap falling down, and I think there was a rat.
This sounds enticing.
I'm selling it hard. Everybody wants well, like tonight, though, for the auction, we go and have margaritas first.
Oh, nice.
See? That's nice.
That's good.
Yeah.
It sounds like a whole different experience. It sounds really interesting. I mean, you actually have to go out and find these things, which is really interesting. And, like you said, you're going to go out and have margaritas first. It sounds interesting. Like you're going out there and doing part of this as a community. So that's kind of nice. You're getting out of the workshop or whatnot.
Right. Well, I just think, I was just really excited. Number one, I think if anybody's selling vintage, hopefully they got some ideas about ways they can do SEO or ways they can get started. Because I think a little bit of it is we tend to have our own little groups and we say, do you know what this is? And people will be like, oh, that's a hobnail tea leg holder. Okay, good. It's factually correct, right? And so if somebody is literally looking for a hobnail tea light holder, I am your gal. But the problem is that you're going to sell more if you can appeal to people who are looking for a certain kind of thing, like an antique candle holder.
Yeah, they don't know exactly what they're looking for. They don't know the actual perfect name for it, right? But they know what use they're trying, what job they want it to do for them.
Exactly. And I think for vintage, a lot of times we can get very insular and all the people that we talk to go, oh, I love Fenton glass or I love and nobody else really cares. They just want a white candlestick with the bumpy on it. Right. And so I think that's a really big deal. I think the more that we can, only the people that use Marmalead, but the more that we can be good at SEO, the more we're going to crush all the other people which is what I want to do. Like I'm really nice and I'm really fun and I like to do marketing and I like to help people and I'll tell you all my secrets. But at the end of the day, I want to sell more old shit than anybody else. So that's something that Marmalead does help me do, and that knowing SEO, that's really unfair because I know it.
So I did want to kind of ask you about that a little bit at the beginning when you were talking about the pewter chalice, right? And you had to kind of like, you like the challenge of marketing to that specific thing. I think there's a lot of people who are in kind of the opposite boat where they look at that and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so difficult for me. Like who would want to buy this, right? Oh, someone who likes vintage things, right? That's not going to get you very far. You need to be really specific. You called out Renaissance fairs and people doing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Those are two very specific, but probably very accurate ways of targeting the people who would be interested in a listing like that. How do you do that? How do you start? If you're someone whose mindset is somebody who likes vintage, I don't know, I can't get past that. How do I even find my target audience? How do you go about solving those challenges that you like to solve so much?
Oh, so first off, this is my absolute God-given talent is to figure out who's going to buy crap. Okay. You want to figure out, I have a little knob. This isn't a vintage knob. It's a new knob, right? But it looks like Alice in Wonderland. So you have to figure out who would like something that's a little whimsical. So it could be for a child's nursery. It could be for somebody who's a little crazy. It could be for an art room or a craft room or whatever. And so what you want to do is you really want to sit there and just think about that person. If I have a angel glass thing, I have to think who would really want to buy this. This is going to be a girly girl, man. So first off, right off the bat, she is wearing pantyhose every day and she has powder in her bathroom, right? Like that's the lady that's going to buy this. She needs to have enough money to afford my tchotchke because it's not inexpensive. And then you want to kind of picture her bathroom. Like you want to think glitz and glam and old Hollywood and gold and glittery and think all of these adjectives, because I do think that we need to have really heavy SEO on the front end of your listing so that they can, if somebody's looking for an actual thing, they can buy it. But then at the end is the long tail of it. We get so many characters to do this. And you want to think about that woman and what she would be looking for. I have all kinds of old gear tools, right? Like paint scrapers, right? So this is a paint scraper. My husband had a nervous breakdown because I had this big old paint scraper, metal handle, spackle on it, sold that sucker for $14.50, right? He's like, who bought that? It was a lady who wanted a made in America product. So first off, made in America.
Yeah.
And second off, she liked the feeling of using something that was older, right? This thing is awesome. I use this all the time. I'm an artist. I like to do all kinds of stuff with glue and things like that. I probably use this 3 times a week. So I could try to sell this as a small paint scraper, or I could sell this to artists, right? Mixed media artists, pottery artists, anybody who does things like that. So I think, yes, get the actual use of it, but then also try to think of niches of people that would want that. We were also talking real briefly. I actually wrote a little ebook about this and about niches in there. Is about figuring out who's going to buy your stuff. Because it's so exciting. It really is super fun to try to figure it out. This isn't like, it is not like your plain Jane handmade sellers where you only get to pick one. You get a new one every day. Like, who's going to buy this thing?
Question about that then. So with some of this vintage, like Gordon started asking, and you were explaining like how you kind of nail it down to this listing and who it's going to be, and you're really, profiling them. So then you have the SEO down, and then you have of course, your description part. So for instance, that knob you mentioned, it could be someone's used this for like a whimsical kids room, or it could be, different types of people. So one path you could go would be talking about how it could be used in a kids room. Another would be any of these other uses. What do you put in the description then? Like to make sure that it's still compelling for the person reading it, even though they might be in one of, let's say, 3 different groups.
So it doesn't count, right? Like, so for the first time in my life, I don't have to factually correct to make my title and my description match. It doesn't count towards SEO at all. So I can say whatever I want. So a lot of times I'll start it with, oh my gosh, I can't even believe how awesome this knob is. I bought it originally to use on this, that, or the other thing. Or I saw this across the room at an estate sale and I thought, oh my God, I better get it before somebody else does. And then I'll say, I thought of, this would be perfect in a baby's room, or you could use it for this or that. I literally just free associate my product descriptions because I want the people to see that. This is the whole niche problem in anything. You're thinking, well, if I say these things, then everybody else isn't going to want to buy it. I will guarantee if somebody's trying to match this knob, they don't give a shit what my description says, right? They're like,
that's a good point.
I have 5 of these. I need 6. She can say whatever she wants. I'm buying the knob, right? But if it's somebody who's on the fence, who's like, oh, should I buy this whimsical knob or should I buy this whimsical knob? And they say it is a gold knob, 13 inches, 13 centimeters wide. I don't know how many centimeters. This, that, and the other thing is very factually correct, or they land on my listing and they hit, like somebody who's enthusiastic and happy and excited and, oh my gosh, they message me, they ask me questions. I think, oh, what the? They're scissors, lady. But she wants to know how much chippy paint is there. Oh, and I'll take another picture for her. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of chippy paint. If you want more, scrape it some more, But that goes back, Richie, to the thing I'm not buying a pair of scissors, buying the experience of owning a pair of scissors. It's very fun. It's really like I don't do drugs, but you could do acid and write your descriptions, man. Because they're not buying anything practical. Like if you need sandpaper, you're not going to buy a 40-year-old sander. You're going to go to Home Depot. So I'm not trying to attract any of those people. I'm trying to attract the people who want something different. You're never going to buy any of my stuff, probably. My husband thinks it's all, he's like, he liked a lamp. One lamp. But other than that, I'm not trying to convince anybody that it has a value. I'm just trying to tell them what I feel the value is and why I loved it first.
Makes sense.
It's very, very strange. It really is different than selling. Like if you're selling a necklace or you're selling a ring or you're selling, greeting cards or something that you're making, you are trying to compete against a million other people. You are trying to make something that they want. This stuff is already made and it's already been loved by somebody else who obviously cared about it enough to have it in their house and to keep it for 40 years. You kind of have to find the person who feels the same way you do, who wants a ratty old, Uncle Sam and toolboxes instead of, drawers from Michael's and things like that. You really have to find those people.
Makes sense. No, that makes sense. It's definitely different. And especially when you're talking about vintage stuff, and you've pointed out how many markets there are where there's very few listings, because it's not like someone can just make them. If they made it right now, it wouldn't be vintage anymore. So it could be someone, even some of those low volume, low engagement type things. It could be because there's nothing out there to really click on. Like I'm going to search, and if I'm looking for something, like the knob, for example, right? I have 5, I need 6, and I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep coming back and look until one pops up, and it's going to be a waiting game.
Right? And people who like vintage don't want something new. Like my worst place to go is Walmart. I go there and I'm overwhelmed by the plastic of it all. And, I will take the rat in the shed with crap falling on my head all day long before I will go to where it's just, there's nothing there. Now, my mother-in-law doesn't want anything that isn't brand new.
Mhm.
So she is not my target market. And if you're trying, as a vintage seller, you're trying to convince people to want old stuff, stop doing that.
Yeah.
You want to, you want to preach to the choir. You want to let them know, oh my gosh, the patina on this silver is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Patina is actually just where it has, tarnished. But don't polish it. Like, somebody could go right now to Macy's and buy a fully polished thing. They want that old look.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen episodes of Antiques Roadshow where people bring things in and they've had something cleaned or, fixed over the years. And the appraisers will be like, if you hadn't messed with this, it would have actually auctioned for a lot more than it would now that you've messed with it.
Exactly. So that's another thing that people ask me all the time. My friend I fight with, she's like, are you going to clean this? Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm not going to clean it. She's like, there's Uggs on it. And I'm like, the pictures had the Uggs. It's not like I'm sending them something. I didn't put them on after I took the pictures. But that's a big question in the vintage sellers. They'll ask, should I clean this? I lightly clean. Like, I sent out a tray today. It had a bunch of rust on it. It was really pretty. It was a blue tray with flowers on it. It had some rust on it. And I did think there was a little bit of Uggs on it. So I just cleaned it with a very mild cleaner, but I was not going to fix the rust. That's what they bought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people can get upset about that. Even the cleaning, like you just mentioned, a very mild cleaner. In the little bit I do know about vintage and like antiques and old stuff, yeah, people are very particular about, you cleaned it? What'd you use? What'd you touch this with? They are very particular about it. Doesn't matter how filthy it is. It could smell. And they'd be like, I'd much rather you not touch it, because they're into that. Either they have somebody that refinishes stuff for them, or likely they're actually into doing it themselves too.
Right.
And they would much rather not have someone else, kind of like, a mechanic that has like a car that is like their car, and they're like, no one else touches this car.
Well, but that's an awesome point, Richie. So one of the things in my description, because you're always wondering, like how do you fill out this description, right? So I have a listing master, and I talk about like where I got it, because they always ask me anyways. They're always like, do you know the history of this item? Yes, I got it at an old dear who died's house. I'm always like, no, I got it at the home of a lady who was a huge collector of bunnies. And she had the neatest, like, I tell a story about it, right? She had a ton of bunnies. And then I do the dimensions of it. And then I do the condition of it. And I tell them exactly the condition of it. This deer lists, he tips a little bit to the right. You could probably bend his leg and make him stop tipping, but I'm not going to do that. Right? So could I get more money if I was willing to try to snap off a brass leg? Probably, but I'm not going to do that. So that's a big part of what you can talk about. And it's so funny that the condition being bad is actually a benefit to a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's character.
Yeah, it's character. My computer right now is sitting on a ratty box that is metal and it has chips on it. Right? I could have bought a computer stand, but that isn't that isn't what I like. I like ratty old boxes. So
there you go.
It's super exciting. And I think that a lot of Marmalead is good for us as far as research, as far as, the storm thing. That is really good for when you're kind of doing those same kind of like light switch covers, or if you were doing amethyst glass or you were doing Fenton glass or hobnail glass, you guys don't know what this is, but people that are doing that, you can start collecting some of those things. And the other thing it's doing is it's reminding me that hobnail glass is farmhouse, whatever the farmhouse thing is, farmhouse decor. And I think that will really help sell it too. That's kind of the Pinterest of it.
Nice.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's awesome to hear.
If you want to come down to Florida, and I'll be happy to take you out to some of my favorite places.
That actually sounds really fun.
As long as there's margaritas beforehand, let's do that.
Yeah. That does sound fun. I did want to call out too the ebook that you mentioned earlier. So this is a sweet book that you've put together, and you're offering it up for free for anyone who's interested. Obviously, it targets vintage sellers. And anyone who's interested in picking up this book can do so at your website, which is marketingartfully.com/vintage seller ebook.
Yep.
So for anyone who's interested, go check it out. It's a really nice book that Tara's put together, and she's put a lot of thought into it, and a lot of her expertise goes into this book. So if you are a vintage seller, it's probably a fantastic asset to have and familiarize yourself with a lot of the things that she's talking about in there.
Yeah, I think if you're a seasoned seller, there's maybe some stuff that you haven't thought of, and if you're thinking about starting, it really walks you through like shipping and niches and sourcing and all of that. So it's pretty comprehensive. I did functionally what I did was I wrote 3 giant blog posts because people kept asking me questions, and then I cleaned it all up and I put it in a really easy to understand format. It's a PDF, so it's easy to read.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I love talking to you guys.
We love talking to you too. It's been fantastic. And I still want to pick your brain about SEO. So I'm thinking maybe we can punt that to another episode and have you back again later. And maybe we could talk about the difference between Google SEO and Etsy SEO and help some people kind of really understand that they're 2 completely separate beasts.
They are. And I think that the other part of the thing that people are missing there is Google Shopping actually favors Etsy. So I think they get confused by that. They're not picking up on our SEO. They're picking up on Etsy as a whole. Because you'll see it'll tip back and forth. Etsy will be there and then eBay will be there. Etsy. And that has more to do with programming than it does to do with anything that we control. So.
And I mean, I can see too, even with Etsy's advent and announcement of having the ability to do Google ads right from within Etsy against your listings, it's blurring the line, and it's probably adding more confusion than anything to people who are trying to make sense of what SEO means to them.
Well, I have the perfect example of, if you have 30 more seconds.
Sure.
Of the people who would do Google ads as opposed to Google promoted ads rather than promoted listings, right? So I have a client who I do stuff for, and she sells dog urns. They're beautiful. They're handcrafted. And if your pet dies or your cat dies, your dog dies, it's very, but it's a super specific niche.
Yeah.
Right. So you have all the people in the world who could possibly buy an expensive pet urn. And then you narrow it down to people that want something ceramic and that want something handmade. And then when you take that additional step and say, I only want to talk to people who are on Etsy, that makes the buyer pool really small, right? Like that's an incredibly small buyer pool for something that's very targeted. So we took her off promoted listings entirely and on only Google listings. And so I know she's gotten at least 1 sale from it. She doesn't sell a ton of them. But that's the kind of thing that you want to look at is the buyer pool big enough within Etsy for you to support you? And if so, then just, sell the crap out of your stuff there. But if you do sell something that's really, really specific like that, where the buyer pool may not be big enough, that's when I would go to the Google.
That's a great point. That is a fantastic point.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So
thank you so much, Tara, for doing this. Thanks for coming on here and chatting with us about vintage stuff. It's, again, something that kind of gets overlooked a lot in the Etsy space. People, I don't know if it's because the majority of people on Etsy happen to be handmade or what, but it's something that doesn't get as much attention as it probably should. So this has been fantastic.
Yay! And we'll come back and talk about SEO another time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
We would
great.
definitely love to have you back and chat about SEO another time.
Awesome. Thanks. I have to go have margaritas, Richie.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Sounds good.
Do you do frozen or on the rocks?
Frozen salt. My friend does rocks, and then it makes the auction better.
Perfect.
Perfect.
All right, and for everyone listening, go make yourself a margarita now because your mouth is probably watering. And we'll see you guys next time on Etsy Jam.